Welcome back to China Manufacturing Decoded, everybody. Adrian from the team here, joined by our CEO, Renaud, this time. Hi, Renaud.
Hello. Hello, everybody.
So today, Renaud, we're talking about compliance with CE and UKCA for general consumer electromechanical products. Quite the mouthful there. But yeah, basically the keywords here are CE and UKCA compliance. And I mean, this covers a lot of products, right?
Yes, correct. And basically, it covers the product for which safety is important. Now, it's not all and only about safety, right?
Yeah.
For example, let me see. The Eco-Design Directive is one of the directives related to CE. So the products that fall in the scope of that Eco-Design Directive have to bear the CE mark and the UKCA mark, for selling into the UK. And it's not purely about safety. That one is more about energy, not consuming an excessive amount of energy, right? But if I really simplify, it's about products that are more likely to come with safety hazards, usually for consumers, but not only for consumers, right? It's very wide.
Yes.
It includes medical devices, and there's even a separate regulation specifically about the active implantable medical devices, because it's even another sort of class of products, and it includes basically all electronics and all electrical products above a certain voltage. Basically excluding those that are with very low voltage. It includes, personal protective equipment. It includes toys and a lot of, children types of products. It includes, measuring instruments and machinery and lifts and so on and so forth. There's the full list will link to that in the show notes. It's all out there on the website of the European Commission. Now, some people think that all products to be sold in the EU must bear the CE mark. Absolutely not. Like if you buy, garments or, a lot of furniture, and there's a lot of product categories that do not come under this scheme of having a CE mark. And actually, if you put a CE mark on them, well, you are in itself, that's not, I don't think that's really a huge issue. You will not get a huge fine or have to recall or anything, but you're going to call the attention of the market surveillance authorities. And they say, well, on this product category, a CE mark, what is that doing here? And then they will think, well, these people know nothing about product compliance, and let's contact them, let's ask them for the technical file and this and that, because they probably have no clue what they're doing, so they might have done something wrong. Okay, so you're calling the attention. So don't put the CE mark on everything, right? Only if it's necessary.
Right, yeah. So because we've started off talking about CE then, okay. When we are looking at CE, you've made the point that in general, this is for products that are going to be manufactured and sold into the European Union and the UK at the moment. We'll come on to that a little bit later on, though, because remember, we spoke about UKCA at the top of the show. I think just a quick maybe overview of how to obtain the CE mark. I think that's going to be helpful at this point.
Sure. So if your product has to have the CE mark, well, you get to refer to the related directive or regulation. Okay, it's very easy to look that up. Again, we'll have a link to that in the show notes. And okay, then you go into that. Let's say it's a directive, and then you go and look at the scope to confirm your product has to be in there. All right, and then you basically it tells you a lot of the information you need to know. but it's a very long read. Okay. If I summarize it, basically, there's going to be some standards, some technical standards that usually start with EN something. Okay. These are called harmonized standards, meaning that they're accepted for the whole European Union. All right. That's why they call it harmonized.
Yeah.
And they change over time. Okay. So you need to make sure you have the latest information. But for that specific product, what standards do they have to pass in order to establish that they are compliant? Okay. That's one part of the answer, but it's not the full answer. Okay. But first, there are some standards. If you pass these standards, as they say, you establish presumption of compliance. You've already done a big part of the job. Okay. Now, it's not a must. In some cases, these standards might not exactly apply very well to your products, and you might come up with a better way to test them and establish that they're safe. But in that case, it's called a type examination. You have to work closely with one of the testing labs that are nominated for that, and it's very special. I'm not going to cover that. It's usually pretty unique. But anyway, what I was saying is that one part of the answer is to make sure that the product actually passes the technical test based on the harmonized standards that apply. But it's not the entire solution. You also need to collect a number of information that will go into the technical file. Okay, technical file, technical folder, technical documentation, right? Different, usually people call it technical file or technical folder, right?
Yeah.
And each product must have its own technical file, right? Including typically what kind of product is it, a description, the bill of material, the instruction manual. So some basic documents like this, plus some test reports and or certificates. Doesn't have to be certificate, okay? But any basically reports that show that tests have been done based on the applicable harmonized standards and that it's passed, okay? And all of that is sort of attached to a declaration of conformity, the DOC. Yeah. That's sort of a central document. For each product, there must be a declaration of conformity. If you sell in the EU, and let's say you're going to sell in 10 different countries that have 10 different languages, well, the declaration of conformity should be in 10 different languages, and they should spell out, okay, this is the product, the model number, etc. And we, the manufacturer, declare that they are in conformity with that, such and such directive or regulation, etc. Okay. In principle, you have to do that before you put the product on the market. You should not wait for the market surveillance authorities or customs or, basically you should not ask for the authorities to contact you and ask for it. It should already be there, already ready by the time you put the product on the market, right? So you have a product, it has its own DOC, Declaration of Conformity, and the DOC is sort of supported by all the technical file. Okay, that is sort of the way to view it. All right. And the CE mark, your ability to put the CE mark on the product is supported by the DOC, which is supported by the technical folder. Okay, it's sort of the result. You have done all that work, and then you sort of establish that the product is compliant, and you declare, hey, I declare that it's conform to the applicable regulation or directive, and I put this product on the market. Okay, it is issued by the manufacturer. So let's clarify. So the European Commission has their own lingo, okay, their own jargon, and one of them is the economic operators. And I'm not going to go through all of them, but basically, what we call a manufacturer is not what they call a manufacturer. If a company, I don't know, in Germany buys a product from China, let's say, I don't know, a Bluetooth speaker, very simple product, very common, okay, cheap, okay. They buy a Bluetooth speaker, they put their own brand on it.
Yep.
they design the packaging. They put it on the market in, let's say, in Germany, Netherlands, Sweden, Austria, Denmark. Okay. And they do not mention the name of the real manufacturer, right? So Shenzhen, blah, 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 company. They do not mention it because they don't want anybody to know, right? They don't want their competitors or anybody else to know where it's made. In that case, that German company is considered the manufacturer. They put it on the market, all of that in their name is just like they are the manufacturer, okay? And as the manufacturer, they have to produce the declaration of conformity themselves. I hope it makes sense.
It's a good summary.
Okay, I'm trying not to confuse people.
No.
It's obviously there's much more depth in this, but if I summarize it, sort of how it works, that's my best try.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense so far. So that leads me on to the next question then. So if we don't follow this sort of these rules or this process and obtain the CE mark, as an importer, what's going to happen?
Well, you can be fined if they are afraid that it might present some safety issues. You might have to do a recall, and it's not impossible that you might end up in jail or something, right? So it really depends on the type of product and the type of the potential severity of the issues that might come from the products that you brought on the market. Okay. And it also depends on how sort of reckless you've been, right? So if you have taken some reasonable steps, you've done some due diligence, but you missed a few things, of course it's not as bad as if you did nothing, right? If you just you fly to Guangzhou, you go to the Canton Fair, you say, I want this, you just buy them and put your logo on it, put them on the market, do nothing, just pay the supplier, pay for the shipment, import it, sell it to some shops or e-commerce or something, and you get caught, you've done zero of the reasonable steps. You've done zero due diligence, right? And if you do that with some, for some products that end up hurting people, because sometimes, like, the market surveillance authorities actually are doing very little, okay? A lot of people in the industry kind of complain that they're really not doing that much. Okay, yeah, they will check here, they will check there. If you're a retailer, if you have 10,000 products sold in 100 shops, yeah, you will get controlled here and there. Yeah, right. But there's a lot of operators that are sort of under the radar, right? And they can operate under the radar for years and years. Now, that stops when some people are complaining about the product, and they're complaining to the right authorities in their country, and these authorities will do a little investigation, and that's when the party stops, right? And if some people have been hurt badly or even died, battery catches fire, the whole house catches fire, that kind of things happens, right? And they look at it and they say, well, this product is totally non-compliant. Who brought this into the market, right? They will look into it. And same thing if there's been some catastrophic economic loss, right? It's not just about killing people. It's also about, just not destroying property, right? Because some of these products might, again, the example of the battery that catches fire and then a whole building catches fire, but it can be something else, right? Can be explosive equipment. I mean, there's a lot of things, pressure vessels that explode. There's a lot of things that are really scary. So if things go wrong, they will go after the people that they can go after, right? And can they go after the Shanghai ABC import-export company? Probably not that easy. But can they go after that importer in Paris? Yeah, much easier, right? So of course they're going to go after the importer in the EU, right?
I'm just thinking what Clive Greenwood would say about this. I can hear his voice in my head. He'd probably be like, and rightly so.
Right, and rightly so. Yeah, we covered this a little bit in a previous podcast, and yeah, he mentioned that the market surveillance authorities do pretty much nothing. Well, it's not exactly true. They do some stuff. I regularly have some feedback about, them checking some of our clients. So I know that it's happening, but there's so many operators of just, that just stay under the radar. And the EU has been closing the gaps little by little. There's an economic operator called, it's not fulfillment center. It's, okay, I forgot the exact name, but basically the Amazon, eBay, right, all these companies, they might operate and the seller might be wherever, in India, in China. So who is the importer, right? So for a long time, who's going to be sued? Well, we don't really know. Well, I think it was in 2019 that this was clarified and that they actually have a role, okay? And that's why, for example, Amazon has been taking product safety more and more seriously, and they've been kicking out a lot of products that could not show the right paperwork, right? So the EU has been trying to close the holes, right? But there's still a lot of holes.
Yeah. So I mean, it's absolutely not the case that it's impossible to import products into the EU or UK, which are supposed to bear a CE mark and have gone through all of the due diligence and testing. But it's actually, you can do it, it's possible. But of course, if you're caught or if problems occur, then they're going to go hunting for who's going to be responsible.
Oh yeah,
but you shouldn't do it, obviously. But it's possible.
Right? It's illegal. It's illegal. So
You
don't need to. You don't need to be sued. A simple administrative control can lead you into a lot of trouble, right?
Yes.
You don't have to wait until you get sued. But if you do not get controlled, if your products don't cause any major issues, then you can keep operating under the table for a long time, right? But it is absolutely illegal. I mean, it's just like, I don't know, hiring some staff that you don't declare, or misrepresenting what HS code the products you buy fall into, so that you pay a lower import duty. I mean, there's a lot of things like this that are quite dangerous. People are playing with fire sometimes, but yeah, this is one of these.
And remember, we're talking about general consumer electromechanical products, and I mean, a lot of those these days do have batteries, and wherever you've got a battery, you've got a potential risk of safety and damage. So, and we all remember the story of the hoverboards. I've started to see them around a little bit more now, so I guess they must actually be legit, or maybe, but they were all sort of bursting into, not all of them, but a lot of them were bursting into flames, and they were clearly coming in and they were not properly tested and validated by whoever was bringing them in, I think. And then they sort of got banned for a while, and then you never saw them around. I'm thinking about in the UK for sure, right? And now you do see kids on them a little bit more, so maybe they've sort of caught up with how to properly, do the due diligence on them and make sure that they are technically safe. But that, I mean, that's a good example, and that's just one of the millions of different kinds of devices with batteries. So yeah, I mean, it's really a broad brush, isn't it?
To be very clear, because some people might say, "Oh, but they don't know what they're talking about." Batteries do not fall under the CE mark. Okay, let's be very clear. Now, there's a lot of products that fall under the CE marking scheme for sure, that include batteries, right?
Yeah.
But batteries alone have their own. It's a regulation, about batteries and waste batteries, and it's 2019 Okay, repealing the directive from 2006. Okay, so I was right. It was a directive. It is now a regulation. Batteries sold apart from, just as batteries themselves in the EU, it's different. Okay.
Yeah.
So sorry. Yeah, please keep going.
No. That's a good point to make. As you mentioned at the top of the show, CE mark products don't include all types of products. And I mean,
Right.
this also goes for UKCA, which we're going to move on to. So we've been speaking about CE so far. So what is the difference then when we hear this particular phrase UKCA then? What's the difference between UKCA and CE?
Well, as you know, your compatriots voted for Brexit, right? And your government had to sort of plan for it, sort of, or they should have. And and one of the points was, what about product safety standards? How, and all the related regulations. What are we going to do? We can't keep calling it CE because this is administered by the Commission, the EU Commission in Brussels, but we have to manage it ourselves, right? So they came up with this very, it is exactly the same thing, basically, to be the same content. Things are written a bit different. It has a different name, UKCA. I think it stands for UK, so United Kingdom Conformity Assessment, okay, UKCA. Just to say this is a separate type of mark that is administered from a different administration, okay?
Yep.
Apart from that, for the time being, the content is all the same, right? The short answer is all the same. Things, and it was already the case in the past. A lot of these directives from the European Commission came up in some kind of technocratic kind of English, and then different countries sort of translated it in their own ways, and transposed it into their own national body of law, right? And so the UK has been taking these directives and adapting them a little bit, but the content is exactly the same, all right? And that hasn't changed. That hasn't changed. It is still part of the body of law of the UK. The content is the same. Now, if you take a product that has the CE mark and you have the declaration of conformity and the whole technical folder and everything is fine, and you put it on the UK market today, you're okay.
Yeah.
2024, it's also okay, right? So it was supposed to be okay until, I think, end of last year, and then a lot of companies were not ready. And the government just said, okay, we it's a mess. All right, give it 1 or 2 more years, right? So if they don't push it back again, we don't know. If they don't push it back again, but I think this time they really, now is really ample time, I think. If you put a product on the UK market in January of 2025 or later, it will have to be marked as UKCA, okay? Can also have the CE mark. I mean, they're not going to make different editions of different products, right? But it will have to also have the UKCA mark to be sold on the UK market. Right?
Yeah, it's 31st of December 2024. The ability to mark products with CE expires in the UK.
Right. And we'll include that link in the show notes. And things might change, okay? So you need to keep referring to that page on the UK government website.
You know what, Renaud? Actually, I think we need to make the point right now, though. We're saying UK. Actually, it's Great Britain. we need to make the point that you don't mark products UKCA in Northern Ireland, and that's an important point.
Correct.
Northern Ireland is going to follow the European regulations for many, many numerous reasons, which there's probably not a lot of point in going into in this particular podcast. But for listeners who are not accustomed with British history and all of that, they have closer ties to the Republic of Ireland, and so we can't, as British people, basically put a big wall up between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland. So they need to really use the same rules as Europe, because that's what's used in the Republic. That's my very, very quick summary. Sorry if I've got it wrong. I think that's pretty much right.
They're actually planning to have a UKNI mark.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Another one. Yeah, right. UKNI. Yeah, this is all, politics, and I don't really understand it. So it's also in the link in that will be in the show notes. And it might change anytime as they define things further. So anyway, the one thing to remember is that right now you have a product that you're going to put on the market in the EU and in the UK. You can just follow the exact same process and put and just mark it as CE and UKCA. And if you are fully in compliance for CE and the relative directive, you don't really have to read the same, the same piece of legislation on the UK government website, and check again if it calls for the exact same standards of test or these kind of things. No. It is still very much aligned, which is very good news. Still makes things easy, but that's only this year and next year. But after that, who knows?
Well, about that as well, you mentioned harmonised standards for the EU. As part of the divergence process caused by Brexit, I think the UK is going to be, I think they have developed what they call designated standards, which are supposed to replace the harmonised standards for the EU. Now, how different they all are, as you mentioned, is probably very, very similar in most cases. I guess, but I guess that as an importer into the UK, if you are going to be selling products specifically into the UK market, you'd better check about the guidance on designated standards, as they're called, just in case there are changes or they do change in the future.
Right. Right now, my understanding is that it's just a difference between the EU jargon and the UK government jargon. Is the same thing. All right. But this is just my my understanding on that. Yeah, right. So again, going back to the UK politics, what's going on now? They're talking about repealing like thousands and thousands of pieces of legislations that came from Brussels over the years, right? But people also say that it's not even possible. Like the people who will have to go through all of that and actually enforce these changes will not even physically have time to go through it all and repeal them one by one and all these kind of things. So it's not even realistic. So there's a lot of weird posturing going on, right?
Oh yeah, because the government that are in place at the moment, they're the government of Brexit. So even though Brexit has not been probably of net benefit to the UK yet, if ever, they have to say we're going to make it work. It's like you've bought a car with 3 wheels and you drive it around, even though it's sort of the sparks flying from one corner of it where there's no wheel, and you're saying, well, the car drives, we're just going to have to get on with it and we'll just drive around like this. Long term, if they can start unpicking all of the European laws that we've been following, I guess they can do them piece by piece, but, there's probably thousands, if not millions, that cover all of the countries in the EU and formerly the UK. So I don't know. I suppose politically it's grandstanding for them to say, yeah, we're taking back control. So we're going to be getting rid of these silly rules from Brussels. We're governing ourselves now. I suppose as the government, they want to cherry pick which ones they can change or get rid of that would presumably give some sort of benefit to the UK, because you've got to admit that some European rules, there's a lot of red tape, and this was one of the reasons that Brexit happened in the first place. You know, the European Parliament and the way that the laws worked, it's not always easy to have one size fits all, is it, when you've got 27, 28, 29 countries, and it gives an opportunity to say that rule's silly, we're going to get rid of that. Whether they can actually do it, whether it's possible, I don't know. You know, we're all still here. The UK hasn't disappeared. We're all coping, but yeah, from a layman's perspective, I mean, it doesn't seem to have been very beneficial, that's for sure.
Yeah. Have you started to see some UKCA marked products?
Yes, I have. Yeah, definitely. I've seen one or two, not a lot, but I have definitely seen it around. Yeah. So it's starting. They are starting to come out, but you'd expect that because, you know, we're down to fewer than a couple of years before everything's got to be UKCA. So yeah, I have, but not super common.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Interesting. And by the way, a piece of advice for people, you know, who are discovering this and say, oh, okay, I need to have CE marking on my product. Again, if you go on, you know, Alibaba, or you fly to the Canton Fair, or you go walk around the showrooms of different types of Chinese suppliers, very often you will see a CE mark on the product, right? And sometimes it's even in the mold that makes the, you know, that they use to make the product enclosure, for example, right? And then you ask, oh, okay, so this product is CE. Like, you have all the documents, right? And so on. And then sometimes they will say, like, straight, you know, well, no, we just put CE because, you know, the importer told us to put CE, like, you know, that's it. And they have no clue. They have zero clue about everything that I mentioned so far, right? And in some cases, well, that's fine, because maybe I'm the importer. I get them, you know, I design this product, I get this supplier to manufacture it, but I arrange, as the buyer, right? I arrange all the testing and certifications and all the documents and everything. I don't even show it to the supplier because I don't want them to use that to sell the same product to other companies, right? So the supplier knows nothing. And then if they put my product in their showroom and they show it to some other companies, they will have no clue what to say. They will just say, well, yeah, I don't know. We set it over there and, you know, they told us to put the CE mark, right? So in some cases, it might be true that it's compliant in the sense that it's been, you know, tested and so on. And another importer did everything right. Okay, so if you take that product, it's probably safe. However, if you're going to put it on the EU market, you have to have, you know, the technical file and, you know, and everything that must be in the technical file, including test results and so on and so forth, right? In some other cases, the manufacturer will have these things. Sometimes the manufacturer is more hands-on and keeps the test reports and so on. Okay. Sometimes it shows their name and so maybe they had to pay for it. Maybe that other buyer told them, hey, you have to do it and you pay for it. And if it's okay, I will buy the product. Then they did it and they paid for it. And then they keep the test results and the certificates and everything. And then they can show it to other buyers, right? So you have all kinds of cases and you need to understand the situation by asking the right questions. Some Chinese suppliers know what the process is, and they I would not say they can guide you through it, but at least they can provide, you know, a lot of the things that you need. And some other Chinese suppliers have no clue about it and they don't care because, again, they are not considered the manufacturer. They're not running any risk, really. So they're like, well, whatever you want, you know, I sell it to you. no problem. Then it's your problem. But if you want to buy, you buy. I'm happy to sell it to you. Give me your money, right? So you need to be very, very careful here. Very careful when you see that.
Yeah, good advice, and something to remember there. Because this is for products that are being sold into Europe or the UK, it doesn't necessarily mean that companies that need to follow this need to be European or British. If you're an American company, for example, this is still going to apply to you.
Oh, yeah, of course. If you put your product on the market of the EU and or the UK, well, you get to look into this for sure.
Yeah.
One important topic also I should mention is that
all right.
So far I mentioned, that the manufacturer is responsible for putting all this together themselves and publishing the declaration of conformity. I mean, not publishing, right, but preparing it so it's ready to be given when requested. But depending on the kind of products, sometimes a notified body has to be involved. So notified body, what do I mean? An authorized laboratory, an authorized testing house. Okay, so you have the big names like, TÜV Süd and TÜV Rheinland, and you have BSI, and you have Bureau Veritas, and you have all these people, European companies only, right? That are authorized to do that job and to actually establish, and verify conformity. Okay, so for example, medical devices, class 1 means lower risk, is self-declaration. Okay, now is not a bad idea still to work with one of these notified bodies and get them to produce a verification of conformity, right? So that they verify everything. They take care of the testing, and then they look at the whole thing, and then they say, okay, now sort of the technical file is complete and sufficient, and it's been tested to the right standards. All right, it's a plus to do that when your product is, how to say, could be unsafe. It's better to go the extra way, to pay them an extra $1,000 or something to do that, to produce that verification of conformity. Then you use that as a basis, then you draft your declaration of conformity, but it's not a must. However, if you do medical device class 2 or class 3, involving much more risk, then it's a must. You have to involve one of these notified bodies, right? That's what they call it in the EU. And they can be found in what they call the NANDO database, NANDO. And they are different for different types of products. Okay, so be careful. A notified body that's okay here will not be okay for another kind of product necessarily. Okay, you always need to double check. But basically, you need to work with them all along, and they will do the testing, and they might have to also go check the manufacturers, quality systems, and so on and so forth, right? There's a certain number of things that need to be done, and then at the end, once everything, all the boxes have been ticked, they say, okay, we confirm, all of this is fine, and you are authorized to affix the CE marking and the UKCA marking, on the product. This is very clearly mentioned in the directives or the regulations, right, that apply to the product. So you might have to work very closely from early on with one of these. Otherwise, if it's not a must, you don't have to work with one of these notified bodies. I mean, you could have maybe your internal laboratory. You could use the manufacturer's internal laboratory. You could use a cheaper testing house from China. You could do, as long as it's clearly, up to the right standard, the harmonized standard, and things are documented the right way, and it's pretty clear, there's data and everything. Okay, it's been tested to that. All right, because in the end, as the quote-unquote manufacturer, the company that basically puts it on the market in the EU and the UK and does that in their own name, you have the ultimate responsibility. So you have to trust the lab, right?
Yep.
If you trust them and you're ready to sort of, put your hand or to stick out your neck and say, yeah, I'm pretty confident. Go ahead, right?
Mm.
But again, for the more risky types of products, it's not allowed. You have to work with one in a short list of European testing houses that have been authorized for that.
Yeah, that's a good point to remember. Are there any very specific UKCA testing houses yet as well? There must be, right?
So right now, obviously the BSI and Intertech testing services are in the UK, but any ones that are okay for CE marking in continental Europe, or it's like a club, right? Mm-hmm. So they can say okay for UK CA and CE, and then the ones in the UK can say okay for also UKCA or CE, right?
Got it.
So far, I don't think there's any change, there's any difference. But again, who knows if we record that again in 5 years, it might be quite different. So let's keep our eyes on that.
Okay, good. Thanks. So that's a really good overview of how to become compliant with CE and UKCA with a focus on general consumer electromechanical products. Of course, there are other product types that might have different compliance requirements that we haven't covered. So it's all a good reminder for anybody wanting to place products on the market in Europe and the UK. Thanks, Renaud.
All right. Thanks.
Thanks again for listening to this podcast brought to you by the Sofeast Group. We're on a mission to provide you with everything you need to manufacture effectively in Asia, including inspections, auditing, new product development support, contract manufacturing, 3PL warehousing and fulfillment, and much, much more across Asia's key manufacturing areas. Visit us at sofeast.com, that's SOFEAST.com, to learn more and get help. If you've enjoyed the podcast today, please do rate, review and share, because it will really help others discover us too.